Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Alors, des grottes préhistoriques au
Everybody's heard about these prehistoric caves, but you have medieval cemeteries and all sorts of other natural or cultural beauties that are on the World Heritage List. But there's another list, and that is the heritage in danger. Some of the most beautiful places on Earth, stupendous buildings that are threatened either by earthquakes, wars, other forms of nefarious human activity, pollution, and whatnot. And now we have an organization that has decided to band up and try and do something about it, especially Iconem, which is a model French startup that produces icons for these sites. Please welcome Yves Hubert. Hi, and thank you, Yves, for being with us. I have been thinking a lot about your companies for the past 3 days because of the terrible events at Notre Dame, and I was wondering, what did you feel when you saw Notre Dame go up in flames?
Alors, moi, je l'ai vu comme des milliers de Parisiens, je l'ai vu devant moi. Donc, j'étais à 150 mètres.
Parisians, it was right before my eyes. My office is 100 meters away from there, and I could see it with my very eyes. And this image that you have, that's a picture I took myself when I stepped out on Boulevard Saint-Michel. And I worked a lot in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, but never have I seen quite such a disaster. And I spent the entire night watching Notre Dame burning. And to see that the fire was put out. And was it a bit like you were being set alight yourself? Well, you feel, of course, involved. It is, I mean, our culture, burning up inside us, and all this up in smoke, literally. I believe you had a project with Notre Dame. Well, yes, only a few months ago we went to visit the attic, right underneath the rooftop of Notre Dame. We took pictures, and we wanted to. We were about to start we want to do a project. Then, of course, now it won't be possible anymore. Now, there's another piece of work that you presented at the Institut du Monde Arabe, the Institute of the Arabic World, and we organize a sort of an immersion visit of Palmyra, Alep, Mosul, and another town. How do you pick up these places where you basically digitalize the whole heritage so that we can have a virtual visit? Well, first you have to go back to the history of our company, and this terrifying drama in Notre Dame sent me back a few years ago, and to the emotion that started Iconem in the first place. There was back in Afghanistan, would you believe? Now, this site was not quite as dramatic as Notre Dame, but it was an archaeological site on the Kushan civilization, not well known, a Buddhist civilization that was there at the time. And I was working with archaeologists, and we found that there was a copper mine underneath the site, and that the entire site was going to be bulldozed out. And I mean, that is the sort of utter desolation you feel. I mean, this dismay that prompted us to do something, the same dismay that we felt watching Notre Dame burn. So archaeologists were able to recover hundreds of sculptures, and as we unearthed these treasures, we knew that unfortunately they were slated to be destroyed, and so we organized drones to scan these sites very carefully, even in areas that were former minefields. This was a former training center for Al-Qaeda terrorists. Imagine that. But I mean, we used the drone to scan an entire landscape in a matter of hours. And if you plot the course of that drone, you can digitalize the entire site in 3D. That's the first 3D model that we did back in 2010, and we were able to create a digital copy of the site itself. itself, at least on the surface, at least keep an image of that and pass that on to future generations. The other advantage of that technology is that you were able to we could identify and scan an entire mountain or a tiny little piece of detail in the mountains. We have these are tupas, these are monuments, Buddhist monuments that are going to vanish because they cannot be carried and they will be just bulldozed away. So we have a database that can be used by the scientific community, and so now they can access, you have a cloud of pixels, tiny little dots that that basically recreate the site both in shape and color, and you have, of course, the archaeological discoveries that are there. You have and yesterday we discussed Notre Dame, but now you have Afghanistan, but you have a whole community of people working on these sites and working using virtual sites. And this is Palmyra, unfortunately. As you know, we arrived too late, just like for Notre Dame. So what can you do? What can you do? That's the Temple of Bel that was scanned in 3D, but after it was destroyed by our friends, the Daesh. And then because we're using old images, we can reconstruct the temple prior to its destruction. The AI algorithms can also use old images, and so they can rebuild in 3D worlds that have completely disappeared. And so this is what we're going to try and do with Notre Dame as well. And so back to your question then, of course you can superimpose several periods in time. This is the Bel Temple prior to its destruction in red as it stands after the destruction. And we worked in about 30 countries around the world, and we create a world collection of sites in danger, working with the support of UNESCO. We have to mention this here because we work with UNESCO in Iraq and in Afghanistan to try and put together this digital encyclopedia that will enable future generations to discover sites that are no longer around. Now, using this digital collection, we can create exhibitions, and that's in line with your question. The idea is to use the digital data not just for purposes of scientific analysis by experts and scientists. The idea is to try and raise awareness on this issue, so organize public exhibitions so that visitors can feel, they're right at the heart of these sites, although it is a virtual experience, an architectural experience, even though the sites, as I said, are no longer around. And this is an exhibition we organized with the Grand Palais in the Louvre 2 years ago on Syria and Iraq. And there you are immersed in the city of Damascus. And the last exhibition took place at the Institut du Monde Arabe, the Arab World Institute. And some of you may have seen the exhibition. Let's see if I can show it to you.
Donc vous avez vu les principaux joyaux du Proche-Orient qui ont été meurtris par la guerre, qu'on a essayé de recomposer grâce à des
destroyed by war, but here we have large-scale reconstitutions so that the visitor can experience the emotion of the destruction. And even though today, this is our own heritage going up in smoke, but even for cultures from around the world, we have an entire population becoming aware of the fact that this heritage in the Middle East is vanishing fast. Why is this sort of memorial work so important. Well, we may not be aware of this, but the next generations, 10, 20 years down the road, will not have access to the sites as they stand today, what's left of them anyway. And this testimony, this will be the only remaining trace, and this is why it is essential, even though I mean, it may not seem, I mean, it's not an easy matter to have a perfect reconstitution, but that's the only link that the future generations will have with their past. This may sound odd, but what you tell, when people tell you you want to preserve things all the time, I mean, that is part of history. You should, I mean, it's in the order of things that buildings should disappear. I remember discussing this with a linguist. I mean, he is sort of reconstituting dead languages. If you have French, but then you have the new lingo coming around, and you have to accept this. Well, cities come and go, at least there are changes, and new layers appear, new cultural layers as well as architectural layers. And we don't want to freeze things in time and say that heritage should be crystallized in one form, but we should keep a trace. We should have sort of this memorial effort. And here, it's not the thing itself, it's another medium you use. It is the technological virtual reconstitution. So even if the city has completely changed in a few years, a few generations, you'll have access to that. You can revisit it. Well, thank you, Yves Huberman, and thank you for this wonderful work you do.
Voilà, je vais laisser la main maintenant à mon collègue Tom pour la suite de l'événement, le troisième épisode de cette saga. À tout de suite.